And what we saw as far as the labor market is concerned, and I'm not talking about the organic telco labor market of our internal employees, I'm talking about the contracted market. We saw massive consolidation. A lot of the little guys went on. I mean, that was pretty apparent. The folks that do the work, the actual physical labor, a lot of them rolled up to larger companies. When Eric came out, it was a pretty good boon to them. First off, is there was work. There was an opportunity to get back to work. It was also very interesting to us because we actually had a more competitive environment to get the same labor dollar. Even though we didn't change our capital investment across those years, it cost us more to do certain jobs in the field than it had prior to and immediately following. And it's just a squeeze on the labor market is all it was. So, mentioned before, access to right-of-way and easements. From a municipal standpoint, we are seeing, I would say in general, very good cooperation. One of the issues we do run into, and it was talked about very high level, was the permitting issue. Maybe a couple thoughts on permitting. One would be consistency, and that is you got to figure that if you're putting a network in, and you use any one of the fringe cities in the metropolitan area or any tier 2 or tier 3 city in the state of Minnesota, if it leaves the city property and goes into a township, and you need a township permit, sometimes those townships don't meet but once a month or every other month. So I can go get that city permit, or I can get the county permit, usually in a matter of days and sometimes a matter of weeks. When it takes us 2 months to get a permit. Now, we generally have very good relationships with most of the township chairs, and we do a lot of that on verbal. So we send them or mail them the actual permit application and any fee that they may be asking for, and then we ask for a verbal approval so that we don't have to wait for the next city council meeting or the township meeting to have that approved and move forward. But when we're talking about a build season, seasonality was also brought up, of 8 months or less without paying for frost, 30 days makes a huge difference. So maybe an ask or an opportunity for this committee would be something along standardization for broadband deployments when it comes to permitting, expedited permit process. From a municipal standpoint, we've seen several municipalities use the right-of-way permit management as an income source. I think that's probably been brought up to this committee before, but general inconsistencies. So it would be interesting to have maybe a small study where you throw a few fee structures up and just say, how have your fees changed from 2005 to 2012? And the general rule is that it's supposed to be cost recovery only for the management of the right-of-way, which includes inspection, and it includes administrative support, any kind of geographic information support, records keeping, etc. But when your permit fees to access a manhole go up 200 or 300% in a couple of years, you have to really ask what changed in the background to drive the fee structure that direction.
I think we know that answer to that question.
Well,
but I appreciate it, and I think that it's a really good question. Danny, you're doing great stuff here. Wow. So standardization, expedited permitting. Can I? So I was just thinking, you know, I've described this to everyone around the table, and I don't know if Mr. Schreiner shared this with you, but over at the Capitol, I had several occasions. You just seem like the sort of group that probably could provide the model that we need to show people. So many times this year, I would be testifying, and a legislator would stop me, and this was a bipartisan problem. People would say, well, everything's going wireless. You know, why do we need to do any of this? I mean, I don't understand why you need this stuff about right-of-way and permitting. I mean, you know, it's all going wireless. And I would have to stop and sort of make with my hands the, you know, the model. But I think maybe we need your group to make a model for us, or someone to make a model for us to show, physically show what happens. Because honestly, we do have a gap in the understanding among policymakers about what's happening here. So they don't understand that the backhaul comes in and feeds in and then goes into, that the tower, you know, sitting out here, this is not magic. There's no, you know, the magic is happening somewhere else. But it is almost as if they think that it is magic. And sometimes they hear things like, I understand that in the loop here, yeah, or local loop, they said, you know, we're up in the cloud. I mean, there are people that don't understand that up in the cloud actually lives somewhere. And so I think we need to figure out as a task force ways we can demonstrate to policymakers and you just seem like the sort of guy that could do that in about a second for me. So, there we go, there's a task. Maybe it's an ACE alumni task.
Wow. I would.
I might have thrown you off by that.
No, I would absolutely be interested in the opportunity.
Yeah, because it's frustrating, I have to say.
I've had the same conversation
With policymakers who are
Yes.
like, why isn't it just?
Why do we need data centers? Because it's all going to the cloud.
Yep. I always say that's the home of the cloud. The cloud needs to live somewhere.
Can't paying for data centers, yeah.
Can I go back to the
Yeah.
permitting piece? We've heard, that there may have been, maybe some efforts that the metro counties and communities are working together on streamlining some of their permitting piece. Have you experienced that at all? And if so, is there a model that we should be looking at trying to
I would
push
have-
further out?
Yeah, I would have to dig deeper into my metro organization to give you a real definitive answer. I can tell you, I mean, just from example, Ramsey County, they're on a cyclic permit approval process. So they do a roundtable where they get their permitting departments together, but they approve the permits only about I think it's every other week. And make sure I got my counties right. But you would think that would be very time consuming. I mean, you have to wait that entire time, but once you're in the queue, it doesn't matter. If you apply the day before and get that permit on the table, each department goes through and reviews it, and it's done. And I'm not saying that's the model I would shore up, but it is an opportunity to look at it and just say, is there an opportunity to reduce time between departments or to make a more universal permit approval?
Good. That's something that we as a group could use some assistance in pointing to and identifying models that could maybe be floated to the top as examples of something we might want to propagate.
And to add on to that, I mean, it doesn't have to be in the borders of the state of Minnesota. I mean, you said 10 states
Yep.
that you have responsibility for. I mean, there might be something happening in another state that would provide another effective model here too, so.
I can sure poll my team. One of the other, outside of the metropolitan area, for example, one of the longer term ones that we've worked on and tried to get better at is the federal side of permits. So U.S. forestry, for example, that's a killer.
That's good Mr. Trump is still here.
So I bring that one up because most of our Forest Service permits have to do with cell towers. Because they're transiting, they're looking for the high point, looking for the mass. And we have to tell our carrier customer that it's going to be X number of months before we need to get an answer back. So, and that kind of feeds into the other piece too, which is even the wireless folks, and I don't know if they're represented here at the table, but their investments are based on a return on investment model. It's not blind investment. So if you looked at the way they deployed fiber to the tower over the years, it was in the highest density areas first, it was along the interstate corridors second, and then it was to the tier 2 cities and below following. And we are in essentially that phase 3 right now, unless you were late to the table carrier, at which time you're trying to do everything at once, which doesn't work. It's very difficult. So.
Others have questions? I think this has been fascinating. I mean, you've given us some real things to think about on the sort of next steps of where we have challenges that are, I think there are many types of barriers in this work. There's